He flinched. I felt something rise in me then, something old and powerful and filled with the kind of quiet fury that only comes from being betrayed after giving someone every gentle piece of yourself. I stood from the bed slowly, holding my stomach, feeling my baby shift inside me as if sensing the storm in my chest. "Get out," I said softly. He shook his head again. "I'm not leaving. Not until you understand why I did what I did." Understand. That word again. As if logic could glue the shards of my broken trust back together. But instead of answering him, I walked past him. Calm, silent, calculating. He followed me with frantic steps, begging, rambling, reaching. His words blurred around me like noise, like static, like a chaos I refused to let in. Because I realized something in that moment. If my husband could lie this deeply, then what else was he hiding? What else had he heard? What plans had he made? What was his real motive for marrying a woman like me? I felt a trembling resolve settle into my bones. Revenge wasn't a desire. It was a necessity. Because he hadn't just broken my trust. He had built an entire life out of my vulnerability. And he didn't even know the kind of woman he just awakened. So I turned to him slowly, looked him dead in the eyes, and asked the question that tightened every nerve in his body. "If you could hear this whole time, then what exactly were you listening for?" His face drained of color. And I knew right there that the truth, the real truth, was much darker than the lie he just confessed. And I was going to uncover every piece of it, one by one. And when I was done, he would regret ever pretending to be silent in my presence. Because the quietest woman alive becomes a storm when she's betrayed. And I wasn't done speaking yet. You ever feel the air change in a room, like the walls themselves know something is about to break? That's what it felt like when I asked Daniel that question. His entire body stiffened, like I had just opened a door he never wanted touched. And the way his eyes darted, quick, calculating, terrified, told me one thing instantly. He had been listening for something. Something specific. Something I wasn't supposed to know about. And that realization didn't scare me. It fueled me. Because when a liar slips, they don't slip by accident. They slip because they're already drowning in their own secrets. He opened his mouth, probably ready with another round of soft lies and rehearsed explanations, but I didn't let him speak. I turned away first, keeping my breathing steady because anger is useless when it's loud. Real revenge is quiet, deliberate, patient. I walked to the kitchen, my footsteps slow, controlled, and he followed behind me like a child afraid of being left alone in the dark. "Amelia, please," he said again, his voice trembling now, desperate. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I didn't answer him. I didn't even look at him. Instead, I opened a cabinet and took out a glass. I placed it on the counter gently, almost peacefully. Then I set my hand over my belly, feeling the little thump inside, a reminder of why I needed to stay calm. I had someone else to protect. And then, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, I said, "Then tell me what it was supposed to be." His breath hitched. He stepped closer, but something about my posture must have warned him, because he stopped a few feet away. "I didn't want you to judge me," he said. "I didn't want you to see me the way the world sees me." "The world sees you as a tech millionaire," I said plainly. "Seems like a pretty good view." He shook his head, running a hand through his hair, the way guilty men do when they realize the ground is disappearing beneath them. "Not that," he murmured. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I said, turning to face him slowly, my expression empty enough to make him swallow hard. He hesitated. And that hesitation, that single moment of silence, that told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't hesitating because he didn't know what to say. He was hesitating because the truth was dangerous. Not just uncomfortable. Dangerous. Finally, he said, "People used me. My whole life. For my money. For my brain. For access to my company. But when I pretended to be deaf, people treated me differently. They trusted me more. They showed me their true selves. I frowned. So you pretended to be disabled to manipulate people? No, he insisted. I only did it with people who wanted something from me. Is that what you thought of me? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. You thought I wanted something from you? His silence was louder than any scream. I stepped closer, letting the tension weave itself tightly between us. Daniel, look at me. He did. And I stared at him the way a surgeon looks at a tumor, coldly, clinically, knowing it needs removal before it spreads. I was 43, I said slowly. Divorced. Barely holding myself together when you walked into my life. Do you really think I wanted to use you? His jaw clenched. No, that's not what I. Then what were you listening for? I cut in, my voice slicing through his excuses. He dropped his gaze to the floor, breathing unevenly. I needed to know if I could trust you. A laugh escaped my lips then, but not a pleasant one. It came out dark, empty, cold. You needed to trust me, I repeated. So you lied to me every day we've been together. I know it sounds bad, he said, stepping forward again. I know it does. But. No, I snapped. It doesn't sound bad. It sounds intentional. He opened his mouth, but I continued before he could speak. It sounds deliberate, calculated, manipulative. It sounds like you came into my life not to love me, but to study me like some experiment. He flinched, and I watched the guilt ripple through him, but I didn't care. Guilt meant nothing when someone was capable of this level of betrayal. He whispered, I fell in love with you for real. After pretending to be deaf, I said. His lips trembled. I didn't know how to go back. That's the thing, Daniel, I said softly. You were never planning to go back. I watched panic bloom across his face, blooming so fast it almost felt like relief to him, like the truth was too heavy to carry anymore. But instead of addressing that panic, he stepped forward, placing a hand on the back of a chair to steady himself. Amelia, he said, there's more. And my stomach tightened. More. The word you never want to hear from a liar. I crossed my arms and stared at him. Then say it. He shook his head. Not yet. Now, I demanded. He lifted his head slowly, his eyes shining with a fear that didn't belong to a man who had just been caught in a personal lie. This was deeper, older, something he'd been running from long before he ever met me. You don't know what you're asking, he said quietly. I'm asking for the truth. That's the thing, he whispered. The truth might hurt you. Nothing you say, I answered, can hurt me more than what you've already done. He hesitated again, and then he whispered something that stopped my breath. My family. They never trusted you. I narrowed my eyes. Your family barely knows me. He swallowed hard. They know enough. No, I said sharply. They know what you told them. He didn't deny it. And that was my confirmation. Every cold glance from his sister. Every stiff smile from his mother. Every strange, probing question they asked during our engagement. Every moment that made me feel like I was stepping into a world that had already judged and convicted me. I breathed slowly, trying to control the fire rising inside me. What exactly did you tell them? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. And then he said, they think you only married me because you wanted a rich man to take care of you. My heart dropped. Not because it was true, but because he said it with his own voice, his own mouth, his own guilt. I whispered, you told them that? He looked away. Not exactly. Daniel, I said slowly, you either said it or you didn't. He squeezed the back of the chair harder, his knuckles white. I told them I wasn't sure of your intentions at first. And did you tell them the truth? I demanded. That I never asked you for a single thing? That I never took a dime from you? That I signed a prenup? That I kept working even when you insisted I quit? His silence echoed like a confession. I felt my pulse pounding behind my ears. You let your family believe I was a gold digger, I whispered, shaking my head. All while pretending you couldn't hear anything I said. I didn't mean it like that, he said, his voice small. I was scared. No, I corrected him. You were protecting something. Or someone. His head snapped up. And there it was, the flicker of panic in his eyes, sharp and sudden. I stepped forward. Daniel, what else are you hiding? He backed up slightly, breath shallow. Amelia, please. No, I said firmly. You don't get to control this moment. Not anymore. He squeezed his eyes shut. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. You should have thought about that before you built our marriage on lies. He shook his head. You don't understand. If you leave, everything falls apart. Good, I said coldly. Let it fall. He opened his eyes, fear twisting in them like a storm. My family will come after you. I frowned. For what? For me. I let the silence stretch. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Until he finally said the thing that made my entire body turn cold. They didn't want me to marry anyone. Not because of money. Not because of reputation. But because of what I'm protecting. I whispered. What are you protecting? He stared at me. And then he said the last sentence he should have ever said to the woman he betrayed while she carried his child. You weren't supposed to find out, but I'm hiding something worth millions, maybe billions, and my family thinks you're a threat to it. My heart stopped. He wasn't talking about money in the bank. He wasn't talking about fame. He wasn't talking about power. He was talking about something else entirely. Something dangerous. Something valuable enough to justify lies, manipulation, and a fake disability. And suddenly, I realized I wasn't just married to a liar. I was married to a man living inside a secret so big. He thought pretending to be deaf was the safest way to keep it. I stepped back, my pulse racing, and whispered, What exactly are you protecting, Daniel? He looked at me with haunted eyes. And he said, My invention. I froze. What invention? He swallowed hard. The one the world thinks doesn't exist. And that's when I knew. My revenge was no longer about betrayal. It was about survival. Because whatever he was hiding, I wasn't supposed to ever know. And now that I did, everything in my life, my baby, my future, my freedom, was hanging by a thread he'd already cut. When he said the word invention, something inside me went still. Not quiet. Still. Like the world had stopped spinning just long enough for the truth to catch up with me. I stared at Daniel, waiting for him to continue, but he didn't. He just stood there, trembling, as if speaking that single word had already doomed us both. I took a slow breath. What invention? He didn't look away this time. He stared straight at me, eyes wide, chest heaving, like a man cornered by his own lies. Something people would kill for, he whispered. My throat tightened, but I kept my voice calm. Be specific. It's a prototype, he said. A device that can process sound waves in a way no existing technology can. It listens beyond what's audible, and translates patterns the human ear can't detect. I frowned. Like some kind of enhanced hearing aid? No, he said, shaking his head violently. Not a hearing aid. Something far more valuable. Something that could change entire industries, security, military, communications, even medicine. I stared at him, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. And your family knows about this? They know enough, he whispered. And enough is dangerous. I stepped back. So you pretended to be deaf to test it? His silence told me everything. And suddenly it all made sense. The strange stillness when he thought no one was looking, the way he sometimes reacted a second too early or too late, the way he always positioned himself at certain angles, as if aligning something invisible around him. My stomach churned. I wasn't an experiment to you, was I? I whispered. I was a security measure. His eyes filled with pain. No, Amelia, no. You used me, I said, stepping back again, feeling the floor tilt. You married me because you thought I was safe. I married you because I fell in love with you, he said desperately. And the lies. I whispered. The secrets. The tests. He swallowed hard. I didn't know how to undo it. I didn't know how to tell you the truth without losing you. And once my family got involved, I couldn't risk them thinking you were a threat. A threat. I almost laughed. Me, a threat. A middle-aged woman who came into the marriage with nothing but honesty and hope? But his expression told me everything. They saw me as an outsider, an intruder, a liability. And now I was carrying something they didn't approve of, his child. I placed a hand on my stomach, feeling the tiny movement beneath my palm. Protectiveness surged through me like fire. So the night you looked terrified, I said softly, it wasn't because you feared losing me. He winced. You feared what your family would do if they thought I knew the truth. His lips parted, then closed. He had no defense left. I walked around the kitchen island, keeping distance between us not because he scared me, but because I needed space to breathe before my anger consumed the air itself. When were you going to tell me? I asked. He hesitated. After the baby was born. I stopped walking. The room pulsed around me, every light too bright, every shadow too heavy. Why after? His face crumpled. Because my family insisted the child be theirs. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. Theirs. I repeated softly. He nodded, eyes wet. They want the bloodline. They want the legacy. They want control. And what about me? I whispered. He broke. Tears slid down his cheeks. You weren't supposed to matter. The words crushed something deep inside me. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. In their world, I was never meant to be a wife. Never meant to be a partner. Never meant to be the mother of a child they thought they owned. I was meant to be temporary, disposable, replaceable. I swallowed the rising heat in my throat. So tell me, Daniel, was any of this real? He shook his head, stepping toward me again, reaching out as if he believed he still had the right. I swear it was real. I swear I love you. I swear I never wanted. Stop, I said sharply. He froze. And I saw fear settle into his bones. Not fear of losing me. No. Fear of something far greater. Something I had just become in his eyes. Unpredictable. Uncontrolled. Aware. Where is the device? I asked suddenly. His mouth opened, then closed again. I can't tell you that. I smiled. Cold. Empty. A smile I didn't know I was capable of until that moment. You think you can lie to me again? After everything? I'm not lying, he said, shaking. I'm protecting you. No, I said quietly. You're protecting yourself. He took a shaky breath. Amelia, my family will come for you if they think you know too much. They already think I'm dangerous, I replied. And I'm starting to believe they're right. His face twisted in agony. Please, just let me explain. Let me make this right. I stepped closer, not lovingly, not gently, but with the coldness of a woman who had finally understood the rules of the game she never asked to play. Here is what you're going to do, I said. His shoulders tensed. You're going to tell me everything. Every secret. Every lie. Every detail about your invention and your family's involvement. Because if I'm in danger either way. I leaned in, my voice sharp enough to cut him open. Better to know the enemy than to fear the unknown. He swallowed. But he nodded. Because he knew he had no choice anymore. He sat down at the table, trembling so hard the chair shook beneath him. I remained standing, arms crossed, watching him with a stillness he had never seen from me before. "Start talking," I said. And he did. He told me about the early prototypes. He told me about investors who had tried to steal his research. He told me about the night someone broke into his lab. He told me about his family's obsession with control and legacy. He told me how they believed his invention would put them at the top of industries that had shaped nations. He told me they didn't want him married, didn't want him distracted, didn't want him giving anyone power over what he created. Then he told me the part that made my blood turn to ice. They wanted to annul our marriage. I stared at him. "When?" "After the baby was born," he whispered. "They planned to take the child and remove you from the picture." "Remove?" I asked softly. "What does that mean?" He wouldn't answer. But his silence screamed the truth. I felt the room spin, but I stayed perfectly still, because stillness is the first step of strategy, and I was no longer a victim in this story. I was becoming something else. He wiped his face with shaking hands. "I didn't want it to go this way. I wanted to protect you." "You don't protect someone by lying to them," I said. "I know," he whispered. "I know. And I don't expect forgiveness. Just don't leave. Please." I stared at him for a long, heavy moment. Then I said the one thing that made him flinch harder than any insult could have. "I'm not leaving." His relief broke out instantly. Too quickly. "But," I continued, "I'm also not staying." Confusion crossed his face. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said quietly, "that you're going to think everything is fine. You're going to believe I've forgiven you. You're going to act like this conversation never happened." He swallowed. "And while you're busy pretending everything is okay," I placed a hand on my belly again, feeling my child move, "I'll be making plans you'll never see coming." His face paled. Because even he could hear the finality in my voice. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't angry. I wasn't broken. I was calm. And calm is terrifying. Especially from the woman they never expected would rise against them. I turned away from him, walking slowly down the hall, letting him feel the cold draft of distance forming between us. As I reached the doorway, I said the last words he'd hear from me that night. "You wanted a quiet wife." I looked back at him, my eyes sharp. "You're about to get a quiet storm." I didn't sleep the night Michael confessed what his father had been whispering into his ears for years. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Brandon's smug face hovering behind my son, dripping poison into his mind drop by drop. Those words, "I don't want to end up like you," stabbed me in the heart again and again. So I didn't sleep, but I strategized. People like my ex-husband don't crumble from shock. They crumble from exposure. You can't scream them into accountability. They've spent their lives rehearsing denials. You have to take away the stage they perform on. And he'd been performing on my son. That was the part that burned the hottest. By morning, I had a plan, not a wild, impulsive one, but one crafted from years of knowing exactly how Brandon thinks, lies, manipulates, and plays the victim. I wasn't going to confront him just yet. He'd spin another story, deny everything, pretend to care about Michael's misunderstanding, and wrap guilt around me like a scarf. No, this time, I was going to use the one weapon he never prepared for. The truth. His own truth. Delivered publicly. And undeniably. But first, I had to rebuild something far more important than revenge. My son's trust. When Michael shuffled out of his room late that morning, his eyes puffy from crying the night before, he looked at me with this mix of guilt and fear, as if he truly believed I was angry at him for saying the things his father taught him. I smiled gently, even though my insides felt like broken glass. "Breakfast?" I asked. He hesitated before nodding. I didn't make anything fancy. Just pancakes, the same kind I used to make for him when he was 10 and refused to eat the school cafeteria's food because it smelled like sadness. When I slid the plate in front of him, he stared at it as if it was evidence of something sacred he had forgotten. He took the first bite slowly. Then another to be why the third, his shoulders loosened. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You don't have to apologize," I replied. "You were told things. By someone you trust." He swallowed, eyes dropping. "That doesn't make it okay." "No," I said quietly. "But it explains it." His gaze lifted, uncertain. "You're not mad." "No. Hurt. Yes. But mad. Not at you." That was when his eyes filled again. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. "You're not losing me, Michael. Not for anything he says. Not ever." His grip tightened. "Mom, I don't want to be like him." "You won't," I said. "You're already better." His voice cracked. "Then why do I feel guilty whenever I disagree with him?" There it was, the root of everything. "Because he raised you like an echo," I said. "But you're learning to be a voice." He breathed deeply, a shaky inhale but steadier exhale. For the first time since he arrived, he looked like he could actually see me, not through Brandon's words, but his own eyes. When he finished eating, I asked the most important question. "Are you ready to start hearing the truth about some things?" He nodded slowly, almost cautiously. "Yes." So I began, not with accusations, not with emotional explosions, not with guilt, but with facts. I showed him old messages Brandon forgot to delete from our shared cloud account. Messages to friends mocking me, laughing about how he manipulated money, calling me useful until I'm not. I showed him the court documents he never bothered to read, the ones proving who paid what during the divorce, disproving the story his father told him about me, taking everything. I showed him the payroll receipts from the years he insisted to everyone that he was the sole provider. And then, most importantly, I showed him something he had never seen before. A recording taken years ago, back when Michael was 14. It was one I never meant for anyone to hear. It was just me, sitting in the living room after Brandon had stormed out, talking into my phone because I had no one else to talk to. A diary entry spoken aloud. In it, I said how I stayed up late worrying if we had enough money for Michael's school supplies. How I wished his father would come home sober. How I was afraid that one day Michael would grow up thinking the way Brandon talked to me was normal, thinking he should talk to women that way too. I hadn't listened to it in years, I didn't want to. But when I played it, the room felt like it stopped breathing. Michael covered his mouth. "Mom, that was me you were protecting. You've always been what I was protecting." He wiped his eyes, shaking his head. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" "Because you deserved a childhood, not a courtroom." He let out a long exhale that sounded like years of confusion finally escaping his body. Then a spark lit behind his eyes. Not anger yet, not revenge, but realization. A painful one. "He used me," he whispered. "He really used me. I didn't answer. I didn't need to." He ran his hands through his hair. "It's like he built a version of you in my head. Someone lazy. Someone who forced him to work. Someone who ruined his life." I nodded. "And none of that was real." "No," I said. "But he needed that version. Otherwise he'd have to admit what he really did." His voice cracked. "And I believed him." "You were a kid," I said softly. "You believed the parent who sounded confident, not the parent who was tired." He breathed shakily. "I feel sick." "You're allowed to." He leaned forward, burying his face in his hands. "Mom, why didn't you ever defend yourself?" I took a breath. Because defending myself to him would have been like trying to teach a snake to walk. But defending myself to you? I was waiting for you to be ready. He lifted his head. "I'm ready now." Those 4 words were all I needed. I knew then that my son no longer belonged to Brandon's version of reality. He belonged to his own. But realization wasn't enough. Truth wasn't enough. Healing wasn't enough. Not while Brandon was still out there telling anyone who would listen that I was a leech who lived off his hard work. Not while he still had the audacity to shape Michael into a weapon against me. So the next step was unavoidable. You're going to see him soon, I said. Michael froze. What? Why? Because you need to hear his lies again, I said. This time with your own mind awake. His stomach tightened visibly. I don't want to see him. I know, I said gently. But you have to. If you don't, he'll sense the distance immediately. He'll press harder. He'll demand to know what changed. He'll start manipulating before you're even ready. Michael swallowed. So what do I do? Nothing, I said. You let him talk. He'll tell you who he is without realizing it. He looked terrified. But what if he tries to guilt me again? I smiled softly. Oh, he will. Count on it. Expect it. Plan for it. People like him always recycle the same script. But now you'll notice the pages showing. He lifted his chin, a little braver than before. When? He asked. Today. He breathed in sharply. Okay. When Brandon showed up that afternoon, he came with the same swagger he always carried, as if the world bent slightly under his step. He didn't even say hello before turning to Michael with a dramatic sigh. Look at you, he said, shaking his head. I leave you with your mother one night and suddenly you ignore my calls. This is exactly why I didn't want you over here. Michael stiffened, but stayed silent. I didn't speak either. I just watched. Brandon continued. I gave you everything, son. Everything. And you repay me by sneaking off to your mother's place like some secret? God, she's got you wrapped around her little guilt trip finger already. Michael blinked. Not with fear, with recognition. He was hearing it now. The contempt. The manipulation. The subtle digs. The rewriting of reality. Dad, he said slowly. Why do you talk about her like that? Brandon threw his hands up. Oh, here we go. Did she cry to you? Make you feel sorry for her? I swear she's been doing this victim thing since before you were born. Michael's face tightened. I didn't step in. Not yet. Brandon leaned in closer to him. Listen, buddy, you're smart. Smarter than she'll ever admit. I know you want more than her simple life. And I'm trying to push you to be better. But she keeps pulling you down. That's what she does. That's what women like her do. Michael's eyes widened. Shock, disbelief, disappointment all layering together. He whispered, Women like her? Brandon rolled his eyes. Oh, stop being dramatic. You know what I mean. Michael swallowed hard. No, Dad. I don't. Well, of course you don't, Brandon snapped. You're too soft. Just like her. And if you keep spending time with her, you're going to end up just like she did, middle-aged, lonely, and living in a tiny apartment, blaming the world for her choices. Silence. The kind that rings. Michael looked at me. I didn't move. Then he turned back to Brandon. And his voice came out steady. Cold. Sharp. Dad, you're wrong. Brandon laughed. Oh, come on. No, Michael said louder. You're wrong. For the first time, Brandon's smile faltered. What did she tell you? He demanded. Nothing, Michael said. You just showed me who you really are. Brandon's jaw clenched. That's ridiculous. You've been brainwashed. You come over here and suddenly she's Mother of the Year. No, Michael whispered. She's just honest. You're the one who lies. Brandon stepped forward aggressively. What did you just say? Enough. My voice cut through the room like a blade. Both of them turned to me. I stood slowly. Not angry. Not yelling. Just done. You've said everything you needed to say, I told Brandon. You've revealed everything I needed you to reveal. Brandon scoffed. Oh, please. What is this, some kind of ambush? No, I said. It's a farewell. He froze. I continued. You don't get to poison him anymore. You don't get to shape his worldview. You don't get to define who I am in his eyes. That era is over. Brandon's nostrils flared. You think you can take my son from me? I don't have to, I said. You're doing it yourself. Michael stepped forward then, slowly, deliberately, positioning himself between us. Dad, he said. I'm staying here for a while. Brandon's face twisted in disbelief. What? Absolutely not. It's my choice, Michael said firmly. No, it's not, Brandon snapped. You're coming home. Now. Michael shook his head. I am home. The look on Brandon's face, the shock, the fury, the loss of control, was something I had waited years to see. He opened his mouth to argue, but then he noticed something. Michael wasn't afraid. Not anymore. And without fear, Brandon's power crumbled. He pointed at me. This isn't over. I smiled faintly. Oh, I know. Part of me is counting on it. Because this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The moment Brandon realized his old tactics no longer worked. The moment he realized the ground under him was shifting. The moment his mask cracked. And soon, very soon, I would take it off completely. Brandon left my apartment that day with the swagger of a man who had just lost a battle he didn't realize he had been fighting. On his way out, he slammed the door hard enough to rattle a picture frame off the wall. The echo hung there long after he was gone, vibrating between us like a warning. Michael flinched at the noise. But I didn't. I'd heard that slam for nearly 2 decades, sometimes in anger, sometimes in drunken rage, sometimes simply because he knew the sound made me jump. But today, it felt different. Today, it sounded like desperation. Like the sound of a man realizing he no longer had unquestioned dominance over the people he once controlled. Michael sank onto the couch, rubbing his temples. Mom, he's going to get worse. I know, I said softly. That's what cornered people do. He swallowed hard. I'm scared of what he'll try. Good, I replied. Fear makes you cautious. Caution keeps you safe. He stared at me as if seeing another side of me he had never been allowed to know. You're calm. I sat beside him. Because I'm not fighting fire with fire, sweetheart. I'm draining the oxygen from it. He exhaled slowly. So what do we do now? We watch, I said. We wait. And we let him expose himself. Because he would. He always did. We didn't have to wait long. The first retaliation came less than 24 hours later. Exactly how I expected it to. Michael's phone buzzed while we were eating dinner. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and turned the phone over without checking the message. Dad again? I asked gently. Yeah. What did he say before you stopped looking? That he's disappointed in me. He sighed. And that you're manipulating me. Classic, I said. He said I need to remember who raised me, and that if I don't come home tonight he'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you really are. I paused my fork halfway up. There it was. The threat. The one I'd been waiting for. What did you reply? I asked. Nothing. He stared down at his plate. I didn't want to give him anything. I nodded. Good. Another buzz. He didn't flip the phone over this time. 2 seconds later, another. Then another. The phone vibrated across the table like a trapped insect. Michael pushed it toward me. Can you just read them? I can't. I hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. So I did. The messages came in rapid fire. You think you're too good for me now? I sacrificed everything for you. She's filling your head with lies. I should never have trusted her with you. You're disrespecting your own blood. Come home now. I'll fix this one way or another. That last one. That was his tell. Brandon never used physical threats. He didn't need to. His entire life was built on psychological warfare, the kind that leaves no bruises but can break bones inside the soul. He's spiraling, I said calmly. Michael rubbed his face. I don't want him to show up again. He won't. Not yet, at least. He preferred to escalate in waves. Why is he like this? Michael whispered. Why can't he just listen? Because listening means he might hear the truth, I answered. And truth is fatal to men who survive on lies. Michael swallowed. What if he tries something to hurt you publicly? He always said he would. A slow smile curved at the edge of my mouth. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The second retaliation was different. Subtle, bolder, and much more dramatic. My phone rang at noon the next day. It was my boss. Hey, she said in a hesitant tone. I need to ask you something. My stomach tightened. Just a little. Of course. She inhaled audibly. Did you really quit your last job because you couldn't handle the pressure? I blinked. What? Or because you got caught stealing? For a moment, I didn't speak. Odd he'd chosen that route. No, I said firmly. Neither is true. That's what I thought. She exhaled in relief. Your ex-husband called the office. He said he was concerned you were having a mental breakdown and taking it out on your coworkers. I almost laughed. Did you believe him? Not for a second, she replied. But I wanted you to know he's trying something. Thank you, I said softly. Oh, and one more thing, she added. We have a very strict policy about harassment. If he contacts this office again, I'll escalate it. I smiled. That won't be necessary. I have plans. The third retaliation came that same evening. My sister called with a voice tight as a violin string. Your ex is on Facebook Live right now talking about you. My God, I whispered, more in exhaustion than surprise. He's saying you're unstable, that you're poisoning Michael against him, that you're dangerous. Dangerous. That word always amused me coming from him. What else? I asked. He's crying, she answered. There it was. The moment he transformed into the tragic hero of his own story. The tearful father, abandoned by his ungrateful son and tormented ex-wife. But public theatrics don't intimidate me. They expose. If he wanted to broadcast to the entire world, I would let him. Because the louder he got, the more cracks appeared in his performance. What's the audience saying? I asked. Everyone's confused. Some people pity him. A few are asking questions he refuses to answer. Good, I said calmly. Let him talk. Let him dig. Because what he didn't know was that Michael had been quietly collecting every message Brandon sent over the last 48 hours. Every insult. Every guilt trip. Every threat. We weren't just documenting the truth, we were building something. A fuse. One I would light soon. But the fourth retaliation, that one was personal. Around 9 p.m., someone banged on my door so violently the hinges rattled. Michael jumped from the couch. Mom. It's okay, I said quietly. Stay behind me. I peeked through the peephole. At first, I only saw rage. Then I saw who it belonged to. Brandon. Face flushed. Hair messy. Chest heaving. He was clutching his phone and shouting at the door, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Open up. I know he's in there. Michael froze. Mom. What do we do? Nothing, I said. Let him scream. Brandon pounded again, harder. You think you can turn my own son against me? You think you can keep him from me? His voice cracked. Not from sadness, but from fury. You're pathetic, he shouted. You always were. And now you're brainwashing him because you're jealous he loves me. The irony almost made me laugh. Then he said something that made Michael's face crumble. You're ruining him the same way you ruined our marriage. My son whispered. He still blames you? Yes, I said. He always will. Another fist slammed the door. Michael, come out here. And then, silence. He must have realized neither of us was opening the door. He breathed heavily for a few seconds. Then he hissed through the crack. "This is going to get ugly." I whispered back, even though he couldn't hear me. "I'm counting on it." He stomped away, swearing loudly enough to wake the entire floor. Michael exhaled shakily. "He's losing it." "That means we're close," I said calmly. "Close to what?" I turned toward him. "Close to taking away his mask forever. Because now we had. Diamond suit, his text threats diamond suit, his office harassment diamond suit, his social media meltdown diamond suit, his attempt to intimidate us at our home diamond suit, and most importantly, Michael's first-hand realization of who he truly was. This wasn't chaos. This was documentation. A pattern, a record, a trail. And trails, when followed to the end, lead to collapse. Michael looked at me with a trembling but determined stare. "What do we do now?" I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Now," I said softly, "we let him think he's still in control. And while he's screaming into the wind. You ever notice how life waits until you finally trust someone before it rips the ground from under your feet? My name is Amelia, I'm 43 years old, and if you're listening right now, I want you to sit with me for a moment because what I'm about to tell you didn't just break me. It remade me into something sharper than every lie thrown at me. And before we begin, tell me, where are you joining us from, and what time is it where you are? I ask because the betrayal I survived didn't care about time zones or clocks. It hit me at an hour when I thought the world was finally safe again. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, you're going to feel every word I say. I married a man who told me he was deaf. Imagine that for a second. Imagine building an entire life around silence, thinking your whispers were safe, your secrets protected, your worries unheard. Imagine learning sign language late in life just to love someone better. Imagine the tenderness of that effort. Now imagine discovering, while carrying his child, that he heard every single word, every sigh, every private confession he pretended not to hear. Imagine finding out it was all an act. Every moment, every gesture, every piece of your heart handed to a man who used your trust like a blade. You don't have to imagine it. I lived it. And this is how it started. I always believed pain would come loudly, but mine entered quietly in the shape of a man named Daniel. I met him at a charity event. Ironic, isn't it? The one place you think people's hearts are soft and honest. He was the tech millionaire everyone whispered about, the genius who lost his hearing after a childhood illness. I remember how strange it felt when he approached me, when he gently tapped my elbow to get my attention, when he smiled like he wished he could hear me laugh. Those were the kind of moments that make you feel chosen, special even, like fate is leaning in your direction. I was older than him by nearly 10 years, and I thought that would make him pull away, but instead he stayed close. He typed messages on his phone to talk to me, he watched my lips like I was the only person in the room, and he learned little things about me that he shouldn't have been able to pick up without hearing. I didn't question it. I told myself he observed people differently, maybe more deeply. I didn't know then how deeply he was studying me. He always knew when I sighed. He always reacted when my tone shifted. He always looked over his shoulder the exact moment someone mentioned him from across the room. I brushed off every red flag as intuition, coincidence, sensitivity. Funny how we explain away the things that could save us. 3 months later, he proposed. And no, I didn't expect it. I wasn't even sure I deserved something that soft and beautiful. A man kneeling in front of a woman like me, 43, divorced, a heart patched together with old regrets. It felt unreal. He typed out a little message on his phone. I can't hear your voice, but you're the only sound I feel. I cried. Who wouldn't? It was poetry soaked in lies. Our life together looked perfect. I used to watch him at night, the way he would sleep with one arm thrown across his forehead like he was carrying the weight of the world. I thought he was peaceful, but now I know he was planning. He always was. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him the only way I could, by signing it to him slowly, letter by letter, my hands shaking. He pulled me into his chest and held me with a force that made me believe he felt it too, the miracle of it. He stroked my back, kissed my forehead, And I didn't know then that every sound I made, my tears, my laughter, the words I whispered as I held my stomach, he heard them all. Perfectly. The cracks began small. They always do. One night, around 4 months pregnant, I dropped a glass in the kitchen. It shattered loudly, but Daniel, my sweet, silent Daniel, was upstairs. He shouldn't have known. He shouldn't have reacted. But he came running down the stairs before I even picked up a shard. He signed to me frantically, asking if I was okay, moving with the urgency of someone who heard the crash as clear as thunder. I told myself the vibration must have traveled through the floor. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself a lot of things, because love makes you build excuses faster than truths. But the excuses ran out the night everything changed. I was 6 months pregnant and already exhausted. My hormones were everywhere, my feet were swollen, my heart was too soft for a world that kept showing me its claws. That evening, I was in bed reading when I accidentally knocked my water bottle over. It hit the wooden floor with a soft thud. Nothing loud, nothing sharp, nothing that should have registered. Yet Daniel appeared in the doorway instantly, panting, alert, eyes wide. I froze. Something twisted in my stomach. Not my baby, not discomfort. Something colder. Something like realization slithering into the room. He signed, "Are you okay?" But I didn't answer. I stared at him. Really stared. And in that moment, he looked terrified, like he knew the mask had slipped. I moved my lips slowly, deliberately, without sound. "How did you know?" His eyes widened. His hands froze midair. And for the first time since I met him, he didn't hide behind his phone or gestures. He opened his mouth. And he spoke. Not in a whisper. Not in a rasp. Not in broken, barely there fragments. He spoke clearly. Smoothly. Perfectly. "Amelia. Please, let me explain." My entire body turned to ice. I felt the baby kick, felt my breath leave me, felt every truth rearrange itself inside my skull. All the pieces of the puzzle I ignored for months crashed into place, forming an image so ugly I couldn't look away. My husband wasn't deaf. He never had been. Every sign, every gesture, every moment of pretend silence, it was all an act. A performance. A manipulation so deep, so calculated, it made me question every memory we had. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't think beyond the roaring in my head. He stepped toward me, reaching out gently, like I was fragile. And I was. But not in the ways he thought. "Amelia. I didn't know how to tell you." A single sentence, and I felt my world tilt. I whispered, "You lied to me." He shook his head. "I didn't lie. Not at first." I stared at him with a kind of disbelief I didn't even know I could feel. "You pretended to be deaf." He swallowed hard. "I needed to be someone you could trust." Trust. The word scraped through me like broken glass. "Why?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "Why would you pretend? Why would you?" "Because," he interrupted, "I knew you wouldn't marry me otherwise." I felt my heart open and bleed right there. "You think I married you out of pity?" "No," he whispered, stepping closer. "You married me because you believed in my soul." "My soul," I repeated slowly, choking on the words he had twisted like knots around my life. "You stole my choice." He dropped to his knees then, a dramatic gesture I would have found moving once, but now it looked like a mask slipping off a monster. He reached for my hands, but I pulled them away. "Amelia," he pleaded, "I love you. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted you to see me for something other than money and fame." Something inside me snapped. "So you tricked me into seeing you as a victim?" I picked up my phone, opened a folder labeled Plan, and showed him everything I'd been preparing long before he ever realized a war was coming. We pulled the ground out from under him. His breath caught. "Mom, what is all this?" "Proof," I said quietly. "Years of proof. Messages. Photos. Financial records. Statements from people he manipulated. Evidence he had no idea I kept. His eyes widened. Why didn't you use this before? Because he still had you, I said. And I wasn't going to destroy your father in your eyes. Not until he destroyed himself first. Michael swallowed hard. So, what happens next? I smiled, a slow, cold, certain smile I hadn't allowed myself in years. Next, I whispered, he learns what it feels like to lose everything he thought he owned. And the revenge began. The night Brandon pounded on my door was the night something inside me finally stopped trembling. For 18 years I had lived in fear of the next explosion, the next insult, the next manipulation, the next performance of a man who used control the way others use oxygen. But that night, the fear died. And once fear dies, a woman becomes dangerous. Michael sat beside me in the dim glow of the living room lamp, staring at the folder labeled plan as if it were an artifact from another world. The thick stack of evidence lay heavy across his lap, proof that I wasn't crazy, dramatic, overreacting, weak, or any of the things Brandon had convinced him I was. Proof that for years, while Brandon played the victim publicly and tyrant privately, I had been quietly preparing for the day he pushed too far. And that day had come. "Mom," Michael murmured, his voice unsteady. "This is all of it." "Yes," I replied. "All the texts, all the screenshots, all the recordings, all the statements, everything he'd ever tried to hide under charm and fake tears." Michael flipped through the photos, the copies of messages, the court filings he never expected I'd dare request, the written statements from neighbors he thought were too scared to speak, and the journal I kept for years, documenting every incident I was too afraid to show anyone. He whispered, "You kept all of this for me?" "Yes," I said. "Because one day, I hoped you'd see him with your own eyes. And when you did, I wanted you to have the truth ready." He swallowed hard. "What do we do now?" I took the folder back into my hands. "Now," I said quietly, "we end this." The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt since I was 24 years old. Michael was still asleep, curled beneath the blanket on the couch. I watched him for a moment, the soft rise and fall of his chest, a peaceful rhythm he could never have had under his father's roof. A rhythm he deserved. I brewed coffee, I sat at the kitchen table, I laid out every piece of evidence in organized piles. And then I made 4 phone calls. The first to my lawyer. The second to Michael's therapist. The third to my HR director. The fourth to someone Brandon didn't know I still had contact with, his boss. By noon, the storm had direction. By 3 p.m., it had force. And by evening, the entire structure Brandon had built on lies began to collapse. It started when the HR director called me back. "Just so you know," she said, "your ex-husband called us again today. But he didn't know we record those calls." I paused. "Record?" "Oh yes," she laughed softly. "He made threats. Clear ones. We'll be filing a report. Do you want a digital copy for your records?" "Yes," I said, pulse steady. "Send everything." The second domino. Then came the call from his boss, a sharp-tongued woman named Donna who had known Brandon for years. "I always suspected something was off with him," she said. "But this is proof." Her voice tightened, icy and controlled. "He broke company protocol contacting us about your personal life. And the language he used. Completely unacceptable. He's on administrative leave effective immediately while we investigate." The third domino. Then my lawyer. "We'll file for a restraining order today. With everything you've provided, a judge won't hesitate for a second." The fourth. And finally, from Michael's therapist. "Your son has been carrying fear for years he didn't have the words for. What he witnessed at your door validated every instinct in him. He's ready to provide a written statement of his own." The fifth. I wasn't destroying Brandon, I was simply removing the shield he had always used. Public perception. The truth was destroying him all on its own. Brandon didn't know yet. Not until the next evening, when the police knocked on his door. Michael and I were eating dinner when my phone buzzed. I recognized the number immediately. One of the officers I'd spoken to that morning. Ms. Carter? Just confirming we served him with the emergency protective order. He didn't take it well. A shiver of satisfaction slid through my bones. How bad? I asked. He tried to argue with us. Then he tried to blame you. Then he claimed you were mentally unstable. The officer sighed. Honestly, he sounded unhinged. Of course he did. What happens now? I asked. He's legally prohibited from contacting you or your son. Any violation triggers an arrest. Thank you, I whispered. When I hung up, Michael asked, was that the police? Yes, I said gently. It's done. He exhaled, shoulders shaking, not with fear, but with relief. He can't come here anymore? No, I assured him. And he can't contact me? Not legally. He let out a broken sound, half sob, half laugh. I can breathe. I reached across the table, took his hand, and felt the tremor in his grip. Good, I whispered. Breathe. Because the next part is his undoing. The undoing came 48 hours later. Brandon posted another Facebook Live. But this time, only 3 people were watching, including me. He wasn't crying anymore, he wasn't angry, he wasn't screaming. He looked hollow, deflated, like a man who had been stripped bare. This is ridiculous, he muttered at the camera, forcing a bitter smile. She's blowing everything out of proportion. She always has. Someone commented, then why did the police come? Brandon froze. His smile wavered. His jaw twitched, he fumbled the phone. I don't know. It's complicated. She's lying. She's manipulating everyone. She made our son hate me. Another comment, screenshots of your texts are going around. They don't look good. I almost felt pity. Almost. He ended the stream abruptly. That was when my phone buzzed, a message from a neighbor. He's outside. He looks furious. My chest tightened. Where? In the parking lot. Kicked a trash bin. Screamed your name. Then left. I nodded to myself. He was spiraling downward, fast. But he still couldn't contact me, he couldn't come near us, he couldn't enter our building. With every outburst, every rant, every meltdown, he was building a case against no one but himself. And he didn't even know it. The final blow came from an unexpected place, his own workplace. Donna called me personally. You might want to know, she said, he's been terminated. I closed my eyes. On what grounds? Harassment, misconduct, and violating company policy. The investigation confirmed everything you told me. She paused. His behavior in the last 48 hours didn't help his case either. Thank you, I said softly. Take care, she replied. And take your power back. I hung up the phone slowly. Michael looked at me. Is it over? I thought about it. Then I nodded. Yes, it's over. Not because he finally saw the truth. Not because he apologized. Not because he learned. But because he ran out of people to perform for. A man who survives on control suffocates the moment no one listens anymore. Brandon didn't disappear completely. Men like him never do. But he became quiet. Small. A shadow of someone who once believed the world spun on the axis of his voice. He moved away within a month. Stopped posting. Stopped calling anyone who knew us. Stopped trying. He vanished into the silence he used to fear. And in that silence, Michael and I rebuilt. Months later, on a warm Sunday morning, I sat on the balcony sipping coffee while Michael tended to a little herb garden he planted. Something he'd always wanted but never felt allowed to do in his father's home. He looked up and smiled softly. You know, he said, I used to think you stayed quiet because you were scared. And now? I asked. He planted another basil seed, patting the soil gently. Now I know you were quiet because you were patient. I smiled. Patience is the blade, I said. Silence is the handle. He laughed. I'll remember that. I stood, walked over, and kissed his forehead. You're safe now, I whispered. He nodded. And you're free, he whispered back. And for the first time in 18 years, the world felt wide enough for both of us.